Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've all had a good lunch. So right now, we're going to talk about sustainability in the aviation industry, and we have two of the best experts we could have asked for. So I'm not going to yap on. I will dive straight in. Sven, let's start talking about innovation. We want to know what kind of innovations are currently deployed at Dubai Airport, and what can we expect to see from the Al Maktoum Airport when it is completed?
Yeah, thank you. Already a pretty proper question to get started. Thank you for that. Well, when it comes to innovation and Dubai Airports, I think Dubai Airports is in an incredibly fortunate position compared to other airports in the world, because the way I look at it is we actually have three airports. So there is DXB today, which we're going to have probably welcoming around 97, 98 million passengers by the end of the year, which makes us more than 10 years in a row the largest international airport. There's also DWC, where last week we had our bi-yearly Dubai Air Show, which now has a capacity of over 10 million, but it's only utilized by about 1.4 million guests. And I would say the third airport is the airport that we're going to build, so will be DWC Phase 2, so the extension of the current airport, which ultimately will handle about 260 million passengers. Yeah. So to me, when it comes to innovation, it's this beautiful ecosystem where we can, at DWC today, which is a slightly underutilized airport, where we can test very innovative technologies. So I'm talking about, for example, autonomous vehicles when it comes to ground transportation, when it comes to GSE. Obviously, hydrogen buses are also on the plan. And at DXB, what we do, since the reality is we will move all operations from DXB probably by December 2032 to DWC, so once the airport is built. So there we do what is still worthwhile when it comes to return on investment. Yeah, so that's I would say the proven and tested technologies such as solar panel, LED replacement, and of course a lot of AI software when it comes to HVAC and so on and so forth. But what we really want to do when it comes to innovation is promote DWC for the next couple of years as the test bed for any new technologies.
So, Alice, to you. It is not always easy to accept changes, to accept innovation, because it sometimes requires a full mindset shift. So what skills and mindsets are crucial for aviation industry experts or executives when adopting new innovation?
Thanks, Nasreen. I think I should say perhaps up front that I'm not an aviation specialist in any way, but I do work with executives, board members across lots of different sectors and industries and geographies as well. So that's the kind of vantage point that I bring. So between Sven and I, you should be able to complete the picture. But my job here is the agitator and to kind of challenge the business as usual approach, because ultimately that's what we need to do to get on a course and a trajectory that is more sustainable. And I think the word sustainability's got a pretty bad reputation. It's synonymous with cost, with anti-growth, with compliance. But what we're trying to do at Cambridge University is to really, first of all, settle into the mindset of inevitability of transition. We're going to bump up against the laws of nature, which are non-negotiable, and either we can proactively shape the sectors of the future and get excited about that and go beyond kind of sustainable aviation as an exercise in compliance, which is not inspiring, towards collaborating at an industry level to shape the sector of the future. And Sven and I just caught up before this, and it's like, if not the UAE and Emirates and Dubai airports, then who? And if not now, then when? Like in terms of scale of influence, position, respectability, if anyone's going to move and take a leadership position and do for sustainable aviation what you've done for safety, customer service, and things like that, I think we just need to get beyond the mindset of this is a compliance exercise, this is a cost, this is the future industry, and we need to compete to win in industries of the future.
So that sets me up neatly for my next question to you. So she mentioned scale. Dubai Airport, you are literally dealing with scale. So how do you build sustainability solutions and then scale it up to meet the passenger volumes that you handle on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I think really, again, we're not only in the right, as you say, not only in the right geography, but also the right time, I think, with the opportunity of understanding how do you scale sustainably. I think the topic of sustainability maybe 20, 30 years ago was something really very much in the corner. Then it was all about retrofitting what we have, of course. How can we decarbonize with existing operations in the airport and airports ecosystem that we have? But I think now is this golden opportunity to embed sustainability in a master plan, embed sustainability in our strategy. And when I say strategy, I'm not just talking about Dubai Airports, I'm actually talking about the whole Dubai aviation ecosystem. So a bit over a year ago, we launched together the oneDXB Sustainability Alliance, which is actually, rather than a couple of airlines, a ground handler, and an airport, which is now one ecosystem that people can talk to, companies can talk to actually trial new technologies. And we believe that that is the only way to scale sustainably. So be ahead of the curve, look at the little seats and test them on our premises with the oneDXB Sustainability Alliance, and then see actually when those seats have grown over 10, 15, 20 years, will these nascent technologies of today, they become common stream and be part of scaling that, be part of watering those little plants. And I think also to Alice's point, I think academia is extremely important here in how we try to do it. You do all the research, and I think once any research paper is published, I think typically that's where academia says, job done, right? But what we want to do is really establish closer cooperation with academia and to see once you're into your research, how can we actually help prove it and help scale it? And I think geographies are very different. So if you take an electric bus, for example, in Europe, this might work very well for an airport that is closed for 5-6 hours a night, where there's recharging capability, time to recharge, and where the climate actually accommodates that. Yet an electric bus in the UAE in the hot summer in a 24/7 operation might not be the right technology. So that's why we need to test all that.
Yes, that's a very, very important point. So Alice, again, what you just mentioned, sustainability usually comes with a price. So what can help airports to sort of still stick to sustainability even when they're under economic pressure?
I think, again, it's a mindset shift between, because we work with executives in my part of the university, and it's that mindset shift between how much sustainability can we afford today towards how can we benefit from the transition if we've recognized that it's inevitable. Like, we're going to go through this decarbonized, nature-positive transition. It's going to be bumpy, it's going to be imperfect, but how can we position ourselves to gain competitive advantage from that at an industry level? And I feel for the airports, we work with, we do executive training for the airports in the UK, slightly different scale, but we work with one group that has about 75 million passengers, and then the other one is an airport with 80 million, you can probably guess who they are. And they come with unique cultures, perspectives, but shared challenges. They are worrying about how to grow without expanding their footprint. They're worrying about how to manage activism and political changes and regulatory restrictions. The last I heard was they're worrying about becoming the new tobacco because they're such a visible sector, and they're concerned that they're going to be vilified for enabling, even though their scope 3 is the 99% of their emissions in terms of their impact. And they don't know how to unstuck themselves. Like most businesses, not just in aviation, but most businesses are feeling quite stuck between what is possible and what is necessary to achieve. So what we do is support leaders within airports and elsewhere to build that bridge between keeping the business going in the short term while positioning to succeed for long-term value creation. And it all comes back to value creation. I can't really stress that enough. There's a lot to be said for collaborating on supply chain and competing on product and service. So really getting together at an industry level. And we've got in Cambridge an aviation impact accelerator that we're very proud of. And that is really trying to get to the science to find and scale solutions as quickly as possible. And it's not just sustainable aviation fuel, it's hydrogen solutions. We focus a lot on contrails. If anyone's not thought about contrails, suggest you go and Google them. There's some really readily available solutions in terms of slight changes to routes that you can do to avoid contrails, which contribute like 50% of the aviation impact to climate change. So there are solutions, they just need to scale, and no single airport or even airline can do that alone. And I think there's a lot to be said for just getting together and working to kind of drive policy, drive finance to fund this in the right way. And I think it's perfectly possible, but it will require executives, leaders to work in a significantly different way to what has rewarded them in the past.
That's a very important point, because the airline industry does get a lot of rap in terms of sustainability. So I have a question to both of you. Is the current aviation infrastructure, is it really actually ready to support massive adoption of SAF or electric aircraft? Yes or no? What needs to be done?
You want to put your bet, Alice? Go for it.
Well, I can answer and then Sven can correct me, because he's the expert.
Or not.
As far as I know, in terms of infrastructure, existing infrastructure, sustainable aviation fuel is like a drop-in fuel. And the challenge with that is that the supply chain is fraught with challenges, because it's really hard to scale that in a way that makes sense. But the aircraft that are around today, they'll be around in 20, 30 years. If you can make a significant portion of the blend of fuel sustainable aviation fuel, then that's great. You just need to sort the supply chain, but the impact on infrastructure isn't as big as, for example, for electric. That requires an entirely different approach in terms of battery technology. In 2016, I was a big fan of Lilium jets. They were vertical takeoff, incredible technology. They looked good. Everyone was investing in them. And I checked them out yesterday, and they've stagnated because they can't get the range, because they don't have the battery technology. And the infrastructure, as we've seen for automotive sector, to do anything electric is quite significant. So I think that's possibly a bit more of an infrastructure challenge, to answer your question. And now Sven can correct everything I've just said.
It's all correct, of course, no doubt. I just want to complement a couple of topics to what Alice has been speaking about. How beautiful, right, to have sustainable aviation fuel. It's a drop-in fuel. It's existing infrastructure you can use. As we know, airports have very long lead times to develop, redevelop, even to retrofit. Also for aircraft OEMs, if you look at the safety features and the licensing they have to go through to basically fly on every country on the planet, it is very difficult for aviation to change anything radically. For the right reasons, of course, because we stand high with safety. It is one of the safest modes of travel, and we really want to keep it that way. So let's not get confused. But SAF is a great technology. Of course, I think when your question to infrastructure, I think we should go a bit earlier in the value chain and say infrastructure, SAF, airports, yes, as a drop-in fuel, it definitely can work, and it is being done, of course, already. But it's more a question of infrastructure of producing SAF at scale, which brings us also to the question of feedstock. So today, the HEFA technology is probably the most, let's say, affordable, the best tried technology. But we know there are some limitations to that when it comes to feedstock. It will absolute maximum, I think, be 5 or 10% of Jet A1 fuel in the future. That's probably as good as it will ever get. So I think it's more infrastructure and technology questions on, for example, power to liquid sustainable aviation fuel. And I think, Alice, here you can come in again, because your you have a good insight in what other industries are doing, yeah. And when it comes to power-to-liquid sustainable aviation fuel, huge feedstock input for that is hydrogen, yeah. So I think what we want to do is go beyond looking at what's happening in aviation, the research that's being done, reach out to other industry and again academia to see what can be the future of a scalable and affordable hydrogen production, because it feeds into sustainable aviation fuel. When it comes to electric hydrogen, there again huge infrastructure changes are necessary, not in one airport, but of course at least 2 airports. And that's of course a very different conversation, and also a more longer term conversation. But we do want to, in building out DWC phase 2, we want to kind of be ahead of those conversations and see what are the different scenarios of the future, and I would say ideally accommodate all of those different scenarios.
Wow, that's very forward thinking. So our next topic is about education, so I'm going to start from you. So you've talked about the accelerator. You see aviation professionals every day. How do you sort of prepare them, train them for a decarbonized industry?
It's as Sven says, every sector can learn from one another, and I think they come to Cambridge for that vantage point because they recognize that they might not be sitting on a lot of the solutions that they need to either scale technology or influence policymakers or unlock finance, whatever it is that they are sitting with. And context is everything. So whenever I meet a business, you kind of meet them where they are and then take them where they need to be. You can't go in and just terrify people with science. We're so immune to it now, even the kind of pre-video about how terrible the world is. We empathize deeply and we want to change things, but we think that nothing we do can be enough. So scary charts with parts per million in the atmosphere of CO2 doesn't make change happen. We've known about climate change for 100 years. The science is more rigorously tested than medical science, but we have no problem going to the doctor, but we won't change our behaviors. So I think there's a disconnect. And if you go into a room of executives with an activist mentality, that can be really challenging. So how we train executives is we research a lot about their context, where they are in the world, what their industry is doing, what are their biggest risks, opportunities. Sometimes you get surprises. I work with a big heavy industry in Southeast Asia, and their biggest risk was that they couldn't recruit talent because they wanted to sit on a beanbag in Google. They didn't want to contribute to heavy industry. So you surface their challenges, and then you really look carefully at their strategy and business model. So if we're talking to a business that is not incremental in its efforts and seeing sustainability as like a side thing to do, a nice thing to do, a nice PR campaign, if it's core to strategy and core to how they're thinking about the future, we'll really delight in working with them on that journey, because we know that the business is serious about not just getting their own house in order, but about influencing change across a sector and across a system, and ultimately bringing other people with them. That's the kind of levels of ambition that we want to see. And just a final point on culture. Culture is crucial. If I walk into a board meeting with Virgin versus any other airline, some have an entrepreneurial spirit, some are really risk averse, some, if you're talking airlines, national carriers have a great sense of responsibility, a great sense of pride, and may play it a little bit safer. So you need to design a curriculum, whether it's a half-a-day board program or a 5-day executive program, painstakingly about where they are in their strategy, their journey, what their culture is, meet them where they are, and as I say, take them to where we think they need to be more ambitious.
Very important point. So, Sven, I'm going to build on that. She talked about the culture. Tell me about the sustainability culture in Dubai Airport. Was that easy to build? Do you face any challenges when you have to put in new sustainability initiatives? How does that work?
I think, we continue to build it. Number one, of course, I think it's a never-ending endeavor, a never-ending initiative. What I was quite surprised by when I got more involved in the sustainability agenda at Dubai Airports and we decided to more centralize that conversation is how naturally already there were so many activities going on. Yeah, so when we did a bit of the round of the different functions, everybody was already doing something. So that's, of course, is very fertile ground to start with. And we've kind of moved on from that into how can we bring this up to the next level. I mean, Dubai Airports, we have 1,700 full-time employees, but if you look at the overall aviation ecosystem, we're talking about more than 100,000 employees. And we think there is kind of a need to build some general awareness around what is the climate challenge, what can we do. So for that, we have some general workshops for people to learn. But not only to learn, also I think to spark a bit the passion about what can we do more and differently. And the way I look at it is actually, if we want to really bring this culture to the next level, we have to start changing 1,700 job descriptions. Now, this is not something for the sustainability team to do. It's not something for the HR team to do. I think it requires that conversation because all these people know exactly what they're doing in their day job. It's kind of giving them the right level of education to see how can they do commercial more sustainably, HR more sustainably, operations more sustainably. And for that also, we're actually looking into a type of mentoring scheme for those employees that, we spark that passion and they really want to kind of move up the ladder. How can we, through mentoring support, get them to the next level and become almost a lead in their function across all also other airports?
Understood. So talk to me about the passengers of the future. Like, do you see a shift in expectations from passengers about sustainability? Like, what do the modern traveler care about?
Yeah, so, I mean, the vast majority of our passengers, so about 98 million guests per year, are below 35 years old. Yeah, so it's a pretty young, I would say, population, number one. And the younger you look and the younger ages you do surveys, the more they put sustainability right at the center. I mean, I'm being challenged every single day at the dinner table by my 3 daughters about, Daddy, what have you done today about it? So I report more to my daughters than internally almost. So for us, it's like it's only going to become more of a topic, yeah. And with the planning and lead times of an airport, we need to be well ahead of the game. So for us, we don't really need to do any research about what do our passengers think. It is a given, and it will only increase.
So, Alice, what are you seeing? Are we still having to educate travelers about sustainability travel, or is that already there?
That's very loud. No, I think people know flying isn't sustainable. So that kind of mainstream awareness is most certainly there. I don't have the data on it, but I think Sven getting pressured by his daughters. We do a roaring trade in Cambridge University from executives whose children pester them about what's happening in their business. It's quite an effective way of kind of increasing executive awareness. So if we can assume that most people know flying isn't sustainable, and we talk about options, and people should be able to make the decisions. But with aviation and flying, it's like, what's the alternative? Like, you get the train, you sail, or you stay still? Like, we're not giving them many options. And I think, whose responsibility is it to pay for the technologies that will make aviation decarbonized? Is it the consumer, or is it industry with the profit margins that they do operate with? Interesting on short-haul flights. So I am proudly from a part of the world where we have the shortest commercial flight running. At Loganair, there's a local Scottish carrier, and we have a 53-second flight from Westray to Papa Westray in the islands where I came from. So that's a really essential service for the islands and the Highlands of Scotland. But unfortunately, it's become a bit of a tourist route now, so a lot of people are taking this 53-second flight to say that they've taken it. But I think born of necessity, people should be able to access aviation. guilting people into doing things isn't the right thing. But there has been government intervention in some cases, so banning short-haul travel, where there's like, if you can get a train between 4 and 6 hours, you're not allowed to fly. I mean, France, the Netherlands, Austria have put in policies in place. More interesting, I think, are Norway and Sweden, where they didn't put a short-haul ban in place, but they had to take a load of routes offline because people just refused to get on the plane because they could drive it or get the train. So that was a consumer-driven preference. But short-haul is a high number of global flights, but a smaller number of global emissions. So we really need to solve for long-haul travel with the technologies that we've just been discussing.
Amazing. We have about 2 minutes on the clock, so I'm just going to ask you guys some final thoughts.
We have about the time for the shortest flight.
That's nearly the time of the Papa Westray flight.
So, to both of you, what does a truly sustainable aviation ecosystem look like to you in 2040?
I'm kind of philosophical on this point. So 2040 is 15 years from now. So I like to think 15 years back and how much can change in 15 years. Like in 2010, Emirates had only just started flying the A380s, maybe a couple of years before, and it was Dubai Airport's 50th birthday, Concourse A, T3 just opened, and the world was half a degree warmer than pre-industrial levels. Fast forward 15 years, we're going to be living in a world that is 1.5 degrees warmer than pre-industrial levels. There will be an extra 1 billion people on planet Earth by that point, and the implications for resource competition, as in do we feed people or we do feedstocks for sustainable aviation fuel, no-fly zones, conflicts, turbulence increasing is a pretty real deal, and the impact on destinations in different climate change scenarios, I don't think we can overlook that, but in terms of sustainable aviation by 2040, I don't personally think we're on the pathway to making that fully possible. But if we can get contrails sorted, sustainable aviation supply chain sorted, and thinking more deeply about electric and hydrogen solutions, that will at least help us go somewhere near the right path. And there is a report from our Aviation Impact Accelerator that has kind of 4 key tasks that I think if we start tracking towards that, we might be doing okay. You can uplift our optimism now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you. Name one sustainability myth in aviation that you want to dispel.
The myth that it's not possible. It is possible.
It is.
Definitely.
Wow, amazing. Last question. If you could fast track one innovation tomorrow, what would it be?
I would put my bets to power to liquid sustainable aviation fuel, because that is the type of SAF that basically has a, in principle, unlimited feedstock. So that's the one to bet on, and it is minimal changes to any infrastructure, to aircraft or anything. So that would be my big bet.
Alice?
Solve contrails and be a bit more careful about private jets. They're not cool and they're not clever. And 2 hours in a private jet equates to one person's average carbon emissions, so just have a think about it before you get in one.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. You were totally amazing. I'm sure you all have a lot to take away from that. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thank you.